All right. We good?
Not yet.
Giddy up.
I'll say when. Don't worry.
It says
right.
meeting is now streaming.
Now
live
you're
on
live.
YouTube.
You're live.
There we
Go live.
Okay. Giddy up. Hi, Jeremy.
Hey, John.
How are you?
I'm good. I wasn't expecting to talk with you today, but I'm always thrilled to, and this is an especially great moment. How are you?
It's the unreported benefit of the Knicks trading for Cam Reddish, which is that we get to talk in the middle of a otherwise uneventful Thursday afternoon. This one came out of the blue a little bit. I know Ian reported it a few days ago, but I guess give credit to the powers that be. They do their work early, right? Like, as you've mentioned many times, the Derrick Rose trade was made well before most of the trade deadline stuff, and we're sitting here and it's still a month away from the deadline. I don't know. What's the first way to attack? I mean, it's a value proposition, right?
You're betting on upside. That's
yeah.
I mean, well, I guess should we first lay out for those maybe who
for anybody who doesn't know, yeah, the Knicks traded for Cam Reddish, and the expiring contract of Solomon Hill, who is currently not playing basketball, and he will not be playing basketball again this year, I believe, because he has a season-ending injury, so he'll be waived at some point. And the Knicks could afford to do that because they're so far under the tax. And they got a Brooklyn second in this deal too, I think, right?
2025.
2020. Okay, so a Brooklyn second, and then they're sending back Kevin Knox and the protected Charlotte first. And for anybody who may not be as well versed on the protections on that pick, it's top 18 protected this year, top 16 next year, and then top 14 the 2 years after that. I'm guessing it's going to convey next year or the year after. You know, your mileage may vary on how good you think the Hornets could be this year, but it's a non-lottery first, and a guy who might not be an NBA player for someone who, I mean, we're all jumping up and down about what RJ Barrett's doing. This guy's scored 30 points a couple times this year too, and looked pretty good doing it.
He did. And, the Knicks, by doing this, addressed the one thing I feel like they have desperately needed, which is adding length on the perimeter. Because I've been thinking to myself, you want to go best player available in the draft, obviously. But until then, or rather, when you do that, do you kind of have this mindset of, well, we're really set on guards and we might be okay with bigs, but it certainly depends on how that plays out. So then you look at the wing position. You look at the fact that it's like RJ is really the only consistent guy with length. And what is Alec Burks's longevity on this team? He's also not quite that long defensive minded player that Cam Reddish can be. So it's fascinating because I've been thinking about Cam and playing out in my head where it's like, would I rather take a chance on their first round pick and have 4 years of cheap money and not have to worry about paying any guy? Or would I rather trade some sort of asset for Cam Reddish to get a 1.5 years of him and to then extend him after that? And I was leaning towards the former because of the fact it's like, well, it'd be great. You can just get cheap labor and it works out perfectly. But at least with this, it feels like, okay, yes, but you have someone who can help you today, this season, where the Knicks are clearly not going to give up on anything.
Yeah.
And it's the ability to just kind of fill in the gap of that role and how you can do it. And the thing is, if you think the Charlotte pick could yield a player better than Cam Reddish, then it's a poor trade. But if you don't, then it's totally fine. And it works okay by me.
Sorry, that's me turning on the YouTube so I could see our comments. Apologies, everybody. Okay. Yeah, I agree. Well, first, let's say we're in agreement. They were never going to use that Charlotte pick. That Charlotte pick was just a way to kick the can down the road and pick up an asset. Here's what's interesting to me about this. So we could have a basketball discussion about Cam Reddish, whether you want to talk about his length, whether you want to talk about his defensive versatility, whether you want to talk about his shot making, whether you want to talk about his ability to do stuff on the ball, whether you want to talk about the reasons why, even in the midst of a poor freshman season at Duke, there were people who were like, this kid's got still the most upside. Like, we could have all those conversations about him as a basketball player. and the upside long term, and whether or not that upside may be ready to be tapped into right the hell now. Because again, as I just referenced, just looking right now, so this season scored 20 points twice in the first 5 games, and he's been efficient from 3, and he's been like efficient from close range. And then if you look back over the last 3 weeks, 34 points on 23 shots, 33 points on 23 shots, so like that's there, and that upside may be ready to be tapped into right now. To me, this trade is a push and pull between the Knicks getting an asset that may be something good for them down the line, or may be something that may look appealing to someone else down the line in a trade, and how they manage the basketball side of it in the meantime. Because if the Knicks were a shitty team right now, like name one of the 4 or 5 abhorrent teams in the league, where they could just plop Cam Reddish in and be like, here, take all the on-ball possessions you want, figure out your shit on the fly, that would make this it would make it a no-brainer, a home run. That's not the case with the Knicks, because they have a couple of guys who very much like to have the ball in their hands. And by the way, when there were too many of those guys on the court for a lot of games this season, they look so great. So I wonder how this is going to look. I wonder how Tibbs is going to play him. I wonder Tibbs going to play him with. I wonder if and when everybody else gets healthy, at whose expense he takes the minutes, and can they manage the basketballs? And I feel bad using that word, and this is the last thing I'll say, but like, he's a talented player. So it's like, we're talking about managing something that in essence is a good thing, but it still needs to be managed. Do you know what I'm saying here?
I do. Yeah. To me, it is the basketball side of things for sure. I can't also help but wonder about the financial side, because that's always where my mind tends to go to. And that sure is, it does with you too. But I know we have questions about that.
Yeah, we'll finish what you're saying, then we'll get to the questions. Yeah.
But the bottom line here, listen, Kevin Knox, he was supposed to be a restricted free agent this summer. He was never going to be, because the Knicks were not going to offer him the qualifying offer, which he would have naturally accepted. And then he would have had a de facto no trade clause. It was never going to happen. They were always going to find a home for him. It was just a matter of when. I didn't think it was going to be on January 13th. I thought it might be February 10th, but sure enough, here we are. But what I like what the Knicks did is, we've talked about the fact that the Knicks are unlikely to go below the salary cap for a while. And by getting Cam Reddish, who's on the same track as RJ Barrett, it basically says not only are the Knicks going to operate above the cap in 2022, they're going to do it in 2023 and beyond. And the thing about that's so fascinating.
Unless they make trades.
But even then, they could still
Yeah, I know.
The point being that they are. I love the fact that they did this from a financial standpoint, because they are creating future money, which is a good thing. The Knicks need to keep adding salary. It's why they used all their cap space this offseason to sign long-term guys and to break it up, and not like go out and get Russell Westbrook and have this one player take up all this amount of money. They're diversifying their portfolio.
It just has to be decent money. And exactly. And let's just say real quickly, the definition of decent money in the NBA, I feel like, is something that is oft discussed and oft misunderstood. Like, there are players who are not great players that are making in like the high teens of millions. Like Aaron Gordon's contract, like when he's not the current extension, the last extension he was on, like he was a quote unquote disappointment on that contract. And yet there was a good team willing to give up 2 first-round picks for the right to pay him that and then extend him at a little bit more money. Am I saying Cam Reddish is Aaron Gordon? No, Aaron Gordon can do very discernible things that help teams win basketball games, but like, there are questions about Cam Reddish, about how much he actually impacts winning. Does that have more to do with the role that he was given in Atlanta and the fit, or like this is more complicated than meets the eye at first glance? That's the only thing I just wanted to throw in there.
100%.
Yeah. Okay, let's get to some super chats here, because you guys are awesome. Thanks for tuning in and checking us out in the middle of the day. Sorry, we had an original stream and then we had to cancel it because we found out we could get Jeremy on here. So obviously, we do what we got to do. So first one, Zach Gronfine. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. Been reloading YouTube, waiting for the emergency live stream. So much to unpack here in terms of what's next. We just got a certified bucket getter. We did get a certified bucket getter.
That's true. He does get buckets.
No, he does get buckets. Again, it's not that this team didn't need another bucket getter. I mean, this was the team that scored 75 fucking points against the Celtics a week ago. But it's like how, you know, they still don't have that main bucket getter. So we've been saying it for 2 years. There's more moves coming. It's just, how do they manage it in the meantime? Our main man, CT Pittman, always comes in for these. I'm here for all the Zion to New York conspiracy theories. Now, let's fucking go. Jeremy, your thoughts, sir?
Does it make it more likely? Sure. I guess so. Does it mean it'll happen? Obviously not. It's a fascinating situation, what's going on in New Orleans anyway. There are some like extreme Porzingis vibes of the two sides agreeing that Zion should rehab elsewhere and not with the team.
You halfway across the country? Elsewhere?
Yeah. It's basically Latvia or Spain. He rehabbed in Spain. So
he's on the Bering Strait. He actually traveled up to what remains of the Bering Strait.
Yeah, but I would still take paella over voodoo donuts. So I guess the point here is, like, sure, maybe it could happen. I think that the tomfoolery with Zion that would have to occur
tomfoolery.
Yes.
Wow.
So you could trade for him because he's now technically going to be an expiring contract in the offseason. You could play the qualifying offer game a year later in 2023, which, like, I don't see him taking that, but who knows? Like, as we've talked about before, if there's one player to, like, you know, kind of use his leverage, it's the guy who has made millions and millions of dollars already just off of Nike subscription, you know, Nike and other endorsements and whatnot. You know, for now, I think you have it a little bit more forward than in the back of your mind, but it still has to be in the back of your mind.
So for anybody who doesn't know, Mark Berman sent out a text saying that he I don't know what the fuck his wording was. He heard around the bend that Cam and RJ actually may not have been the best of friends at Duke. And I will just say that someone else I heard from who I trust had heard the same thing. I don't know how direct, but had heard it. I've also had people reach out to me. Again, these are the days where, like, everybody comes out of the woodwork with, like, I know my friend's uncle's sister's cousin or whatever. I've heard already something counter to that. I have no idea. Are these guys the three legs of the tripod from what's that movie with the porn star who moves next door? Alicia Cuthbert. Don't tell me you're too young. That. Oh my God!
Young, I just don't remember.
I think it's called. It might be called The Girl Next Door. I'm not sure. Andrew was gonna have to put it in the chat.
Rings a bell, actually.
Yeah, the three legs of the tripod. Maybe they're the three legs of the tripod. Maybe they'll hate each other. I have no idea. But there's still a lot of hurdles to be jumped before Zion and his entourage of Grubhub bicyclists make their way to New York. This from Dale, our last super chat from the original room. Grimes can play the 2 if they move Burks. I've seen this generally, and I'm curious what you think. A lot of people are like, well, there's got to be another move coming. I don't think so. I don't think there has to be another move coming. And if there is another move coming, it's going to be a move that people may not want to hear, which is, let's just say it, Mr. Toppin going out in a possible Indiana deal for Turner. Doesn't that make the most sense on paper?
Well, let's look at what I perceive as a logjam right now. So at the 2-3, right, you've got Fournier and RJ, and you're already playing quickly when Rose is healthy at the 2. And then you have Burks, who's at the 3 when Kemba's healthy. And then you have Grimes, and now you have Cam Reddish. So you don't trade for Cam to not play him, which means he's going to
he's going to play.
So it means, okay, well, someone has to move. And now, if you're listening to this, I guarantee your first thought is Evan Fournier, trade Evan Fournier. Maybe. Yeah, and again, he's upped his value to a point where he's not like a complete sunk cost like he was before. He's getting there. I'm still a little skeptical that they would deal him right now.
Would you be surprised or would you be shocked if he was dealt?
I would be surprised. I wouldn't be shocked. I would be very surprised if that.
I'd be halfway between
very surprised and shocked.
I'd be halfway between surprised and shocked.
Yeah.
Erring on the side of shocked.
Right. And that's the thing where it's like, okay, well, you don't want to trade quickly. You don't want to trade Grimes.
They're not trading quickly.
So it's then like, are you going to trade Alec Burks? Okay, if you do that, then what are you doing about the point guard position if Kemba gets hurt? You could like hopefully elevate quickly, but I think quickly is a starter who I don't want to get into the whole point guard or not discussion. It's more what he doesn't do super well, which is driving. He's just not a driving guard, which is fine because he can still have a role doing point guard things in the starting lineup. I just think that Tibbs feels he anchors the second unit in ways that only Derrick Rose can, and putting them together makes it far more lethal. And he just likes having someone who's a little bit more. What?
No, I like. To me, if anything, today's trade, and I don't know what they're going to do, but like to me, it's an endorsement of the Burks starter.
Burks oh, really?
No, I think it's an endorsement of Burks in the starting, because I don't know. It always comes back to Kemba. I'm skeptical about what happens with Kemba moving forward. It's a nice, tidy little salary. Like assuming
it's inevitable with Kemba. He is going to be traded, because here's the thing, right?
Yeah.
I was just talking about the salaries and with Cam Reddish and RJ Barrett. That's 2023. That's when Kemba would expire. And you don't have cap space to then use that money. So it just goes to waste, which is why it's like, you know what a continuous soup is, John? Have you ever heard of that?
No, I have no fucking clue what that is.
In the East, basically in ancient times, there would be this soup that would constantly be heated. And the moment it stops heating, it goes rancid. But if you keep heating it, the soup cooks forever, and it cooks the same flavors on and on. So the point I'm going with this is, if you let Kemba walk and you don't trade him, at some point, you're turning the soup off, right? There's no way of like keeping it going, because you're just losing that soup. The salary disappears.
But wait a minute,
what into something?
What happens if there's an ingredient in the soup that can go bad?
No, because the heat kills the bacteria.
So you're telling me I could put like an avocado in the soup, and as long as I keep the fucking heat on, the avocados, I could eat it a month from now?
I mean, yeah, but there's a reason why continuous soups really don't exist anymore. It's because they're incredibly dangerous. Because you're heating something.
I'm really fascinated by this concept.
Look it
That's
up.
all I'm going to think about the rest
really
of the day.
Cool.
Tomorrow's Knicks Film School newsletter is going to be on continuous soup. Okay.
But that is Kemba. If he expires, you're turning the soup off. Don't turn the soup off.
Don't turn the soup off. Okay. This is a good one for you from Taxi Driver. This is from our new super chat. Thank you, by the way, for all the contributions so far. Yeah, I want soup now too, Andrew. Is Reddish now part of the KP trade? So
I don't think he is.
So they had 19 and 21. They traded 19 for the Charlotte
Hornets pick. Correct. 19 was their own pick.
21 was the Dallas pick. Okay.
Yep. So unfortunately he's not part of the KP trade.
Okay. I had to think for a second too. Because I forgot which was which. Okay, Sam L. My man Jeremy just woke up. Go Knicks. Thank you, KFS.
Yeah, he's been up since like 8:30.
Jeremy has no job. He's living on he's like Will Ferrell in Wedding Crashers.
Oh yeah. I live with my mom. What is it?
What does he shout that he wants? Like, Mom,
hey Ma,
the meatloaf.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Okay. I don't eat. The only nutrients I sustain on are the likes and retweets I get. That's like how I feed.
You know who isn't living on likes and retweets? Zion Williams.
No.
Jesus Christ. Okay. Okay. Andrew, if I've missed any chats or super chats, let me know. We got Kyle Kagan. Thank you for your contribution. Appreciate it. Lunas and Marat, I have to think a second trade is coming. Who's your guess? I think it's a Kemba. It's a Kemba trade. But again, who's involved in the Kemba trade? I don't know. I mean, can we just throw something out there, something fake? So Kemba and Obi make the money work for Turner. But they would have to send another center out in the deal. They could send Mitch, but that's a 3-for-1. And then you're talking about Indiana having another player come back. And that doesn't pass muster. So then we're thinking Noel, Kemba, and Obi for Miles and player X that doesn't make a lot of money. And they're going to want picks too. Maybe the Dallas pick. Is that the deal? Is that the deal?
It's too much for me personally.
Kemba, Obi, Noel, the Dallas pick for Miles and some bad money. I don't know what bad money they have.
I don't think it's a bad trade for Miles. It's just he's kind of come back to earth. Like,
I'm not saying I want this trade.
I hear you.
I'm just throwing out, like, we're talking about like roster crunch and the whole thing. I'm just, everybody watching, just throwing it out there, not endorsing it.
I do also. It's kind of fascinating too because remember when Kemba was out of the rotation and it was like, look, the Knicks are winning without Kemba, or I'm sorry, they're losing without Kemba, and and now they're winning without Kemba, and you could point to the schedules like, well, they're winning easy games. Well, they were losing tough games. So that's the thing with Kemba. It's like, it's not so much like, I can't believe Tibbs benched him. And it's just, it's evening out right now to the point where I like, you could find a home for him. I do think eventually it's probably better to do it in the off season, but maybe not. Maybe if you just feel like you have to get someone, because if you remove Kemba, you're committing to Burks, right? Most likely in the starting lineup.
And you're banking on Rose's. I mean, if they really want to actually go to the playoffs and have an honest to goodness talk with themselves, like, hey, we could win a round. If Rose goes bye-bye because of another health issue, then that goes out the window. Boy, I don't know.
I'll put it this way. I am glad I'm not in Leon Rose's shoes right now, because
a great day for him, but yes. Okay. Robert Cross, Mr. Hashtag 53 wins. Zion's next basketball game will be with the New York Knicks. If that's true, I will go get a crow. I will fillet it myself, and I will make a cutlet, and I will eat it. RJ breaks the Charlie Ward curse. Good to see Cutlet's feeling better. Oh, there you go. I like that. We can just leave that one where it is. Yeah. David Hughes, thank you for your contribution. It says your message was retracted. Chad Cohen, do you think this is the last we see of Kemba? So let's touch on this one more time because I did have one more thought on it. And then go good group from last night plus Cam. Go group? It says, and then go group from last night plus Cam until Rose gets back. I'm sure there's an obvious typo here that I'm missing that makes this make sense.
It's keeping the group that was the rotation from
last night, okay.
It was working.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah. Also, do we trade for Trey Jones or trade for Trey Jones? I like Trey Jones. It's weird because Tibbs said Kemba was making progress yesterday, and then there's a part of me that's like, would it shock you if you never saw if like Kemba shut it down for the year?
No, just because it
wouldn't shock me.
Unpredictable everything's been. Like, he's getting better. It feels like they're kind of trying to kick the can down the road as long as it can go. It's like, all right, the jig is up. We're doing something. At this point, again, if you told me they trade Kemba at the deadline, I'd say I believe you. If you told me they trade Kemba in the offseason as part of a sign and trade or your standard old trade, I'd believe you. I have no idea which direction they're going to go in. But I think if you feel Alec Burks can replace Kemba enough, not in terms of like the level of talent, but the way that he fits with the roster,
it's different.
It's right. It's not necessarily good. It's just, it's different. It's not bad per se, but when it doesn't work, it's bad. At the end of the day, the Knicks need a driving point guard, and that's not really Alec Burks. And if he's not hitting anything inside of the 3-point line, that's also a little troubling. But it's been working what they've been doing in the last 10 games or 7.
But do they need that? Because I feel like this, I don't want to turn this into an RJ. I'm not turning this into an RJ Barrett thing, but like, if everybody seems, if the organization is now of the position that like our best path moving forward, whether it's today, a week from now, a month from now, or 5 years from now, is getting RJ Barrett as many on-ball reps and starting to funnel the offense more through him, then like, Burks does make more sense in that scenario than anyone else on the roster with the starting lineup.
He does, but you also want the diversification of the players, right? Like Burks isn't necessarily going to be a driving point guard, but having someone who drives and pulls up, that's the key, which is why Kemba appealed so much. He drives and he pulls up.
On offense, he appealed so much. Michael Aaron in the super chat. Good to hear from you, Michael. This front office, drafting well, trading well, just being smart and competent, and not giving up Grimes in the deal. Steve Mills, eat your heart out. Here's the question. Does Steve Mills trade Quentin Grimes and Obi Toppin in this deal if he's making it, or is just Quentin Grimes?
No, it's Quentin Grimes, it's Obi Toppin, and it's
And
the
RJ
Charlotte
Barrett.
Hornets pick. Well, actually, he wouldn't have even taken the Charlotte Hornets pick because it would have devalued so much to the point where it would have been like the worst
Yes.
player you could imagine.
Oh my goodness.
Probably.
I'm excited to answer this question. We don't have enough time to spend on it to do it justice, but I'm going to read it from Kevin Danishevsky. Is Kevin Knox the worst Knicks draft pick ever? I would. They made some not great picks back a long time ago. I'll just take it back over the last like 20, 30, maybe 40 years. The Frank over Donovan. So here's the thing.
But you can't look. I think you have to view it as the player in a vacuum, not the because we could talk about the Knicks passed on SGA and they took Knox. You can look at it either way.
But that's exactly how I'm looking at it. I'm looking.
I think
but here's the
you just
thing.
have to value it as the player himself in the uniform.
Yes, but it has to factor in the likelihood of what is the most likely opportunity cost that was passed up. And there is an argument that the most likely opportunity cost passed up by picking Frank was Donovan Mitchell. The most likely opportunity cost passed up by drafting Knox was Mikal Bridges. Donovan Mitchell's obviously a more impactful player than Mikal Bridges, but I don't know if that's
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They passed.
I don't think they were ever likely.
But to me, that is worse. To me, that is more egregious. The fact that the Knicks wanted to trade get another first round pick to trade to get in and get Mitchell is more comforting to me than it is the idea of we didn't even consider this other guy in SGA. Fair. Or Bam, how the Bam workout was great. They didn't he killed it. They didn't show signs. To me, I think the other thing is you have to consider at least Knox showed up. I do feel bad for Frederick Weiss, but he didn't even play.
At least Knox that. Oh my God!
But
on his gravestone,
I'm saying that is that is the difference between Knox and someone like Weiss for me. It's that at least one player actually came to the team. It didn't feel like it was just a complete waste in that sense. He didn't pan out like any of us would have wanted. Obviously, he's not a good draft pick. I would give him an F-. Shout out to Benji. But it's a sort of thing where you at least traded him for something in the end.
Jeremy,
with Weiss, what did you do?
Here lies Kevin Knox. Knicks career. At least he showed up. From another Jeremy E. Cam's offense is nice, but the defensive value he brings might be more significant for this team's immediate future. Shout out to Sean Farmer on the putback that I was just on with Ian. Talked a lot about Cam's defense. Yeah, I mean the defense is solid. As an on-ball defender for sure. I have not watched enough Atlanta Hawks basketball to know how well he is and how consistent he is as an off-ball defender. I'm excited to dig into some tape. But yeah, I think if he can defend, he'll get on the court and Tibbs won't have a problem playing him. So this from Hush Zoo. I like this move a lot. Do you guys think the front office made up their mind of now going the youth timeline and with RJ and co? I really think Evan is going to be traded either at the deadline or in the summer. Thoughts? I think today was the front office trying to have their cake and eat it too. Jeremy, you agree?
My one big thing going into this, and I was going to say it for our eventual trade pod, which it'll still happen, is I have zero interest in trading future first round picks or really good assets for any player who is Julius Randle's age or older. And the Knicks did exactly the opposite, which is what I wanted. They acquired a player who is more along the timeline of the other guys. And that to me is perfect. It's basically trying to, again, as you're saying, have your cake and eat it too. It shows to me that it's not building around Julius Randle. It's building with Julius Randle. And if something else comes up, then you have him under contract. That's why you signed him last season. It's so that you didn't have to have this gap between the trade deadline and the trade restriction being let up in December of the 2022-23 season, which is almost a full year if you think about it, where the Knicks couldn't flip him. They couldn't flip him on the draft night or in free agency. They would have to wait this long period of time. And that's why you lock him up. It's great. But the fact that they are trying to have their cake and eat it too says they are focusing on not right now. They're trying to they're trying to be sustainable right now, but the goal is really 2, maybe 3 years from now.
I think they are putting a lot of faith in Tom Thibodeau to manage the situation in terms of playing time, locker room, continuing to get and listen, man, there are people in this chat who I'm sure would give Tom Thibodeau an F for his performance this year. I think there are people in this chat who would give him an A-. I don't think anyone's giving him an A. They're 21-21, and it's been rocky and it's been bumpy. Can he do it even more? Like I don't know how else to say it. I think this is not going to make his life easier. I think this is going to make Tom Thibodeau's life slightly more difficult, or at least give him like an extra thing to manage. I don't know. We'll see if he can do it. WG, Jalen Brunson's a no-brainer to me now. He fits like he fits like a glove on this team. That's the next move that needs to be made. I like Turner, but what's the exact cost? We don't know what the exact cost is for Turner. Yeah, I mean, if you're Dallas, so Leon Rose calls up and you are going to say what? You're going to say, I would like RJ Barrett. And then Leon Rose is going to say no. And then what is Dallas going to do? They're probably going to hang up. Like, I don't know why, if you're Dallas, why are you trading Jalen Brunson right now? Do you have that little faith in your ability to re-sign him in the offseason? I guess.
It's the finances of it all. So the thing about Dallas is that they don't really pay the luxury tax, and they're already committed to over $135 million. They're going to have a first-round pick.
You don't think they'll go into the tax to keep Brunson?
They haven't done it in over 10 years. But here's the thing. They also have to sign Dorian Finney-Smith. And then you have to consider the year after that, they're still going to be in the luxury tax. And the year after that, they're still going to be in the luxury tax. And then they're going
to fuck around with Luka to that. And they're just going to let, they would never let him walk for nothing. They would do a sign and trade.
Well, of course. I mean,
obviously,
based on the salary situation, there would have to, but
they would have to, because the Knicks don't have any cap space. Yeah.
Right. I guess the big thing is, if you are Dallas, why you're trading Jalen Brunson mid-season when you could say, let's try to at least work something out in the offseason. Because if you're punting, now you could, that's the thing. Like, if the Knicks said, okay, well, we're willing to make a trade with you, but Dallas is going to say, well, if Jalen Brunson's our best trade chip, we need to take advantage of that. Is Jalen Brunson worth the Mavericks getting their own pick back? I'm not so sure, when you can consider the fact that if you do a sign and trade in the offseason, you don't have to give up a first round pick to get him. You could grease the wheels with a mess second round pick to just make the salaries work. You could send Burks back in that situation. There are a lot of different moves you could make, but it's why I don't necessarily see the Knicks paying assets to get Brunson when we know the connections. We know it's very possible that they could work something out. And we know that the ability to start on this team, I'm sure, would be appealing to him. He's starting in Dallas, but there's just a very different situation. Time will tell. I think he's right. He is the perfect fit for right now. I don't think he's the perfect cost right now. I wouldn't be upset, depending on, of course, the price and what it would take to get him, but I think it's more likely to wait a little bit.
I don't know off the top of my head what their worst salary. Oh, I know what their worst salary is. It's Reggie Bullock. It would, like, if it was,
I'll tell you what it is. It's Reggie Bullock. It's the ghost of Willie Cauley-Stein, who's not played since the end of November.
Yeah.
It's Jalen Brunson. It's sending someone like an Evan Fournier contract. They may not want that player. Then one of those players like Willie Cauley-Stein gets rerouted to OKC. They hit the cap floor. Like, that is, and then of course the Knicks would have to maybe send over Deuce McBride, or if the Mavs don't like the fact that they have to worry about Trey Burke's salary because he's got a player option for $3 million next year, the Knicks take that on. They waive him because he can't even play since he's unvaccinated, or they hang on to him and then flip him in the offseason and say, don't even bother coming. I don't think they do that, though. At the end of the day, I guess I'm inclined to think the Knicks stand pat with the Brunson situation and then reassess and try to get him this summer.
Yeah. I just wonder, because if Dallas gets their first round pick back, it opens up a lot of more interesting trade avenues for them this summer to potentially make a deal, because then they have all their first round picks, and then
unless they just change the restrictions on it,
they can do that. But then, and also Mitchell Robinson's long been linked to them. I don't know if that's still germane, but anyway. Okay, let me get a couple more here, and then I actually have to run, and Andrew's going to hop in for me. Anthony Sixto, Jeremy has the number one soup metaphor in the pod game. Completely agree with that. Yushen Zhu, continuous soup is a thing. It has all kinds of spices in it, and it goes on for the flavor. Put fresh protein in when needed, so the protein can get the great flavor. Proteins get consumed, the soup goes on. This is going to be my mission in life for this year. Jason M, You are overrating Kemba off 3 games, then injured. Maybe. I mean, there's big injury concerns with him, and I could see teams around the league being scared by those. And then Matthew Schwartz, how many minutes do you think Cam immediately gets? I'll set the over-under at first game, or at least like first game once he's like comfortable and like has gone through a few practices. 18.5. That's my over-under.
I was going to say 20, but that makes sense.
Andrew?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Gotta be honest, I didn't hear the question. I was setting up.
How many minutes does Cam Reddish get in his first game? And on that note, I'm going to bid you adieu.
Oh, wow. A walk-off question. I'll say 11 along with Grimes, and he basically just fills in for what Kemba would have gotten off the bench, you know? Is John gone? Is it just you and me now,
no, he's
Jeremy?
out. He dipped.
Oh,
It was
okay.
you and I
Wow, that literally was a walk-off. I love how the whole plan was like at 140 he'd go, and I was like, all right, I'll just jump on and read super chats, and he just read all the super chats and then left. He's like, well, then why are we still here?
It is you and me for the next 20 minutes.
20 minutes. Okay, guys, you have Jeremy Cohen and me, Andrew Claudio, here, taking you all the way till 2:00. Talking about the Knicks trade of Kevin Knox for Cam Reddish. So it's funny, people are talking about the threat of the Kevin Knox trade for Cam Reddish, yet not talking about it from the Atlanta perspective, that now this completes the Luka Doncic trade, because now officially it was Luka Doncic for Trae Young and Kevin Knox and a protected Charlotte first-round pick.
It's true. And the second-round pick they gave up, which could be decent depending on how Kevin Durant holds up in 2025.
Wow, you're going all the way out there for the Brooklyn pick.
I got to be honest, that was Schwinn. Schwinn inspired that thought. I will give credit where it's due.
Yeah, I think Kevin Durant has officially gotten me over. His Achilles is eventually he's superhuman. These people are not of this planet. Did you guys discuss the aspect of like what Cam Reddish, if he plays, could do to Grimes' playing time?
A bit. We talked about the logjam and
Okay.
how something's got to give at some point, because it's like Fournier and RJ, Quick and Burks, assuming Kemba's then healthy, and then Grimes and Cam. So if the Knicks aren't trading Grimes for Cam, you're thinking one of two things. One, well, they really like Grimes enough for him to play long term. Or two, they really like Grimes, but they're also willing to include him to upgrade elsewhere. They just didn't want to do it with Cam. So how they're able to get around that is going to be interesting. And also, I'm very curious as to if the Knicks have any desire whatsoever. They may not, but if they are more likely to trade the pick in this year's draft and keep the players that they have versus trading one of the younger players and packaging him for something and keeping this year's pick. Just kind of something to let marinate. I think it's very easy to say trade a pick because we don't have emotional attachments to picks like we do players. Yeah. And this is supposed to be a weaker draft.
Well,
but at the same time, if this is supposed to be a weaker draft, then maybe one of the younger players is worth more, and that's more appealing to another team.
I'd push back a little bit on the attachment to picks as we do players, because there's a lot of Isaiah Thomas PTSD still with this fan base, that like I'm not trading any first round pick for anybody or anything. And then I agree with you that if you drafted him, it means more to you than like somebody else giving you a potentially better player that, because we haven't seen him, we're not familiar with him, and then they show up and it's good. And it's like, oh, wow, it's a good thing we traded Kevin. Like there are going to be, and I'm sure there is, that I haven't checked Twitter yet. There's going to be a Kevin Knox sentiment of, man, why couldn't we have seen what Kevin Knox had left? I thought he was actually pretty good his rookie year,
Yes,
Yeah.
We will see that, and I will not care.
The answer to the question of worst Knicks draft pick is Jordan Hill over DeRozan, by the way.
I think that's fair. It's probably also saddening because of who was picked before him.
Right, but that's the thing I always go back to is like, if you're so upset that they missed out on Steph, like you could have just taken DeRozan next. And then like the Knicks didn't have a player at shooting guard or small forward or in 2022 power forward like DeRozan. They had like they drafted Jordan Hill, who was out of the league in the next 4 years? The answer, in my opinion, that was always the one that frustrated me. And I think the agita that's come from the Steph part of it has been like, I don't care who was drafted in front of them. I care who was drafted after them, especially the immediate pick after. The Donovan Mitchell part of it all, if it wasn't for the fact that like the rumor's been out there, I don't think we're ever going to find out from a reliable source if it's true or not that Phil Jackson fell asleep in Donovan Mitchell's workout. I just didn't think Donovan Mitchell was ever realistic at 8. It was always Dennis Smith Jr. or him. And for the first year, it was like LeBron even said like he should be a Knick. Like that was always the either or. I'm realistic about either or, which is why Mikal Bridges over Knox is the more frustrating miss, you know?
I had not heard that it was Mitchell whose workout he slept through. I knew there was a prospect that he was supposed to have slept through his workout. I didn't know before if it's Donovan's. So, but if that's the case, then not great.
Yeah.
But the past is the past. The future is the future. Cam Reddish is the future.
Yeah, we hear exactly. Okay, Forgotten NYC. 1 super chat equals 1 bread sandwich for Jeremy. Thank you. You get a bread sandwich on Forgotten NYC.
Fantastic,
Jeremy.
I love it. Thank you.
Lunas and Marat. Life's funny. After RJ Cam debates, our Cam is his backup. Is he his backup?
He's not starting. And RJ's not.
That's a funny thing. I had a friend text me when the trade happened. It was like, does he start? And I just, in all caps, over who? Who is he starting over? What are we doing?
If he wasn't starting in Atlanta, like when they're healthy, then he's not going to start here.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're caught up on the super. Oh, no, hold on. CT Pittman. Of course, CT Pittman jumps into the super chat. CT Pittman just saw a stat that says we are the number 1 defense in the NBA since January 1st. Is that true? Yes, it is true. The Knicks have, I mean, if you consistently look at the box scores, the Knicks are consistently averaging under 100 points allowed. Even when they get blown out against the Celtics, it's under 100 points. That stat is very, very true. The frustrating part, I think, about it has been the offense. Either they're not hitting shots or the offense is clogged and we haven't found a rhythm to it yet, which a lot of it probably has to do with the fact that the 2 point guards that were brought back in Derrick Rose and signed to make the offense flow better with Kemba have not been here for most of 2022. So as a result, the offense doesn't flow naturally. And yet the last 4 or 5 games, it seems like they've found a rhythm, and we'll see if that continues.
Yes, we will.
Okay. Does anybody have a random question for Jeremy before we sign off? I'll take a couple random questions. We have over almost 800 people watching in the chat right now. Grimes over Reddish, not close. Yes, this is from XJ. Where do you stand on that?
Sure. Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, again, Reddish has more of the length that you would need, but Grimes' ability to hit threes consistently, the pull-up ability, sure, but even the point of attack defense that's there. Uh-oh, you're laughing.
Oh no, because I showed up. They're asking movie questions.
Oh, all right.
I will say that was my initial thought when I saw the trade, because the same buddy that asked me if he was going to start. Mm-hmm. When he asked me last night, what would you trade for Cam Reddish? My thought was like, do they need another wing? Like, I don't necessarily know I would give up much, especially for what the Hawks might want, which ironically, the Bagley report, I would think the Hawks would want Quentin Grimes to literally replace him in the rotation. And then when I saw the trade go down today, it was like, okay, they didn't trade anybody that was in the rotation currently, but does this mean Grimes jumps down in the pecking order, which is a little concerning the way Tibbs usually turns to veterans. Reddish being 22, I think gives me a little confidence that he'll have to earn his playing time. The Austin Rivers situation is always what I go back to, where Tibbs will play a guy that's worthy of minutes over, potentially the politics of I have to play the veteran. He did that with Dennis Smith. He did it with Knox. He did it with Austin Rivers last year. So I'm going to hope that what we see in Grimes has earned him a rotation spot, and that, that Cam Reddish will also have to do the same in earning that spot.
But the thing to consider is that the Knicks traded a player out of their rotation for a player they expect to be in their rotation. So without doing something, how does that impact your team, right? because you could look at Grimes. Maybe he falls through the cracks this year, which we don't want. But if there's just more seniority ahead of him, and we know that there's kind of sunk costs with contracts and Tibbs leans on his vets, that might very easily be the case. And it's like, well, how do you configure? Which is why I still believe there will be at least one other move on the horizon that kind of consolidates a little bit more with one of those players. My hope is it's not one of the younger ones, but how do they balance the ability to, play these younger guys? Because if you play younger guys, there's a chance you might lose more games. Like if you traded Alec Burks and consolidated him, what does that do for you? It pushes people up, which is great, but unless you're consolidating for the right talent, then it could have adverse effects this year. So it'll be very fascinating to see how Tibbs kind of puts these pieces together.
Yeah, this is why, man, I'm sure you've looked at the schedule and how brutal it gets. Knicks have the third toughest schedule the rest of the year. This is why when's the trade deadline? February 10th. February 10th. So this is why the next month is huge, because if they go into the trade deadline and they're the 11th or 12th seed and they're 4 games under 500, they may look to ship off some pieces and move some of the younger guys up that pecking order that you mentioned. If they've gotten hot and Derrick Rose came back and the offense now works because it's going through RJ, then maybe they're buyers that'll look to consolidate some of the. You guys put it in my head in one of the cap or no caps. They're so set up for a superstar trade. They have so many assets that make it possible. I don't know who the superstar is. I don't think that superstar has made himself evident yet, but they're so set up to make one all-in trade and then plug in Deuce, Grimes, or whoever is left to be part of the rotation right after. It's just so evident. Mm-hmm. James Lee asks, is Zion going to be good when he comes back? What are your thoughts?
Listen, if Embiid can come back from the injuries he had that took 2 of his years out, and 2.5 really, why can't it be Zion? If he's sitting out the whole season, we saw KD sit out an entire season and he's looked great. I mean, obviously it was a very different injury. Jamal Murray has missed a ton of time. John Wall sat out for 18 months. He looked better when he came back. It depends on each player. It depends on injury. It depends on weight and all.
Yeah, I was gonna say Zion's
factors.
way less of an injury concern for me. It's a in shape thing. You know, it's a fitness thing. But right. I'd agree that like a motivated NBA player I'd count on that bet 9 times out of 10. They just got to take that Mountain Dew commercial off the air. They really do. I can't. Every time I see it, I'm just like, this is not something that he needs out there, Oscar DeLeon, I think we'll wrap up with this. Let's go Cam Reddish. What a trade. We've been needing a small forward since forever. RJ been playing small forward. I like him at the 2 shooting guard. Better also now Obi will get less minutes. We could get through one live stream without Obi's minutes coming up. He needs to work on his low post game. Oh, wow. Oscar's in favor of Obi getting less minutes, it looks like. Okay. Jason M has a question for you. Do the Knicks make a first round draft pick in 2022? It's actually a great question.
It is. It is
asking you to put your Brock Aller thinking cap on and project.
Oh man. See, again, before today, I would have thought maybe they'll use the Hornets pick if it conveys to move up. If it doesn't convey, that they have an extra sweetener for next year.
The Brooklyn pick's 2025.
Yeah, but
now they have 2. So as of right now, they have 2 firsts, the Dallas pick, that's top 10 protected, their own pick, and then 3 seconds, right?
For 2020
next year. It's for 2023. It's for 2023. Never mind.
So for 2023, what they have right now, 2 firsts. They have the Pistons second round pick, which will be like top 35, somewhere in that range, which is great, most likely. And then they've got 3 other picks in the arsenal. So a total of 6 picks in the draft. So how they go about it will be fascinating. In terms of the question of trading their pick, like unless they really hate this draft class, I'm inclined to think they'll keep it. But then it tears you apart because it means that one of these players that we're growing to appreciate gets traded, which is just the nature of the business. So I'm going to say that the Knicks are going to keep their pick. But see, that's the thing. The pick can be anything, which is appealing to teams. So if you're making a trade that, gets you a better player of some sort. All right, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say they trade the pick.
No.
I'm going to say they trade the pick.
So here's what I'll say. And it really depends how much you trust this front office. I think if there is a player that they think is definitively better in the upcoming draft when they have a pick available, they will draft that player and trade one of their current rotation players out to try and turn him into an asset. If they don't, we just saw what happens when the guy they wanted in Quentin Grimes would have been available later on. They traded 19, they trade 21. Look at the haul of assets they have now. Saying, will they make a 2022 first round pick could mean they just make one later, because the guy that they're interested in could be available at 29 and they have the 15th pick and they ended up getting 29, a future protected first, like literally the Charlotte trade all over again. That's where I'm going with that, at least. Blood of the Panther, the hashtag free Obi Hive, Burks for Brunson that's how we should wrap up. The Mavericks are going to trade Jalen Brunson for Alec Burks.
Which
man,
the math could work on.
The math could work.
They have a trade player exception that Burks would slide into, and then Brunson would come back, which would then actually give the Knicks a traded player exception of their own. So that is maybe a little interesting wrinkle of what could happen.
Which then the superstar we should be looking to that's going to ask out is Luka, because he's seeing all the good players around him not being kept.
Yeah,
it's like stuck being a 7 seed in Dallas.
Right, like you built the old Knicks, which sucked around me, and then you took the one good guy Knicks that I liked, and now I'm going to go back with him. I'm going to go there.
So wait. There's a rotation there of Luka, Porzingis, Tim Hardaway Jr., Frank, Reggie Bullock, Alec Burks, Trey Burke. And then we'll throw Noel in the trade, so that's why they have a backup center.
Just build a team of Knicks.
Exactly. Wow, James Lee. I will no longer be a Knicks fan if they trade Obi. That's actually where I want to wrap up. We'll ask this last. Do you see them trading Obi Toppin
this season?
Yes.
No, I do.
Do you see them trading him in the offseason?
Very easily, but I'd still lean towards 2023 is when Obi's peak value matters for the Knicks. Like, unless you can force a way to make a trade that gets you a superstar this offseason, and looking at the contracts and the way teams are set up, I just really don't see it. Unless it's one of the guys who's a free agent, like Levine's not going anywhere. Beal, I'll believe it when I see it. It's kind of like, okay, delay it till the 2023 draft, when then you can say, hey, this is an incredible draft class. We've got 3 top 35 picks. We've got a horde of young players that need to go because we have to consolidate in that sense. Knock on doors of teams where players might be saying, I'm done. I don't want to be here anymore. And they will unfold as time goes on. But that's the sort of mindset where I will still be a Knicks fan if Obi Toppin is traded. I just don't want to see him traded right now. I think it's just better if you but that's the thing. If he can't get minutes because Randall is taking it up,
he's a backup.
He's a backup whose value might be depreciating. So it's like, is this his peak value where he has 2 years left, or 2.5 years left on his contract, can't get minutes? It's tough. I don't want to see him go, obviously, but listen, as I've said before, if there's a superstar that comes in the building, fuck them kids.
Yeah, fuck them kids. There you go. I think that's how we're going to wrap up. Someone does have a super chat that I'll read that I think is much more appropriate for a podcast where we have time to prepare. I_enjoy_peace. I'm sorry. Can you guys go over how the Knicks could get a protected pick back? Confused. That's not talking about the Reddish trade, right?
No, I don't believe so.
So just in general, literally look no further than the draft they just had, where instead of making the 19th pick in the draft, they traded 19 to Charlotte for their pick and then a protected pick this year. That's how you get a protected first round pick back.
unless what they mean is how does a team that traded a protected first get their pick back? Because we talked
so
about
like
the
could
Mavs
Dallas
before.
could Dallas
if that's
get
what
their...
they mean, you can do that. It's
Yeah.
crazy, but teams can often grease the wheels down the line to get teams to ease up on restrictions. So if the Mavs pick was really important to Dallas, I mean, they could get it back, but they'd have to make a trade that's worthwhile for the Knicks. They could get the restrictions taken off, so it's not a protected pick, which frees up their 2025 pick and beyond. But of course, the Knicks would want something for that. So the Knicks can kind of hold them over a barrel if Dallas is desperate to get that pick unshackled. But otherwise, I mean, if they wanted their pick back, they're welcome to get it. They just have to trade something to get it.
Good stuff. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in for this emergency live stream. Thank you to Jeremy and to John for being able to jump on at a moment's notice. Thank you, Jeremy, for waking up, apparently, to do this. What's funny is I'm the one that woke up at 11 and then was about on my way to my booster. And then all of a sudden, Cam Reddish became a New York Knick. And
I'm getting the Chris Persianen treatment here.
Yes, you are. Don't worry. Chris is on a mailbag later. We'll make up for it then.
Well, I hope he's awake for that.
Yes,
Probably
let's hope he's awake. I was about to say, we'll text him now to make sure he's awake. If you guys dug this episode, please drop a like on the video. If you dig the podcast that you're listening to, please leave a 5-star rating and a review. Mailbag episode dropping tomorrow with Chris Persianen on. So all your questions from Twitter will be answered then. And until next time, thank you for listening. And we will see you on Monday when John and Jeremy will talk about the most recent week. Let's hopefully wraps up with a victory, which now you're on the losing side. John has won it this week because he went 2-0 so far.
I'll take it. I regret the decision,
Let's see if it's 3-0. If it's a 3-0 week that caps off